Fantastic. Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, honoured guests. You don't fall into any of those categories, Rotarians and fellow athletes. Welcome to our annual Burns Supper. I say this every time that it comes round, that this is really Burns light. It's not going to be a heavy evening of Burns scholarship. It's intended to be a, yes, I know, your time will come. It's intended to be a gentle canter through the life and works of our national bard, Robert Burns. I'm sure that you're going to enjoy what we have to present for you this evening. It's an evening which, of course, has been meticulously planned as if a military exercise by Alistair. And so we are only a couple of hours away from identifying just how quickly those plans are all going to fall apart.
When they beat the enemy.
Well, we at the top table feel we're looking at the enemy already. We may already be there. As chairman for the evening, I take full responsibility for things falling apart. But rest assured, I won't hesitate to allocate blame as and when I feel it necessary to point that out. I'm joined this evening at the top table, and if you hold your applause just till we've been through everybody, because their turns will come in due course. I'm joined at the top table by Ed Campbell, by Bob Watson, by Jill Adams, and by Peter Williams. Thank you. We will hear more from them as the evening progresses. But we're going to begin the evening in the traditional way, and I'm going to call upon Rotarian Hugh McCrae to give us a grace, and after that we will receive the haggis, if you can be upstanding, if you're able, when the haggis comes in, and that's going to be piped in this year, not by Isabel, who's gone home, but by Damien, who stepped in the last minute, and we're very grateful for him doing that. Fortunately, Damien can play the pipes, so that's even a bit more of a bonus. And when the haggis comes in, it will be addressed by Ed Campbell. So, Hugh, if you would be good enough to give us a grace.
Thank you, Alistair. Let the damage begin. I'm going to have to read this because I only wrote it this afternoon. That's Rabbi Burns. It's quite a lad. In fact, a bit of a bloke. His poems, songs and graces too were anything but woke. Now here's a grace you'll recognise. You've heard it all before. It will be quite familiar, but I've added a wee bit more. Some hae meat and canna eat, some wad eat want it. But we hae meat and we can eat, and say the Lord be thanked. But some hate meat and girn and greet, resisting all coercion. So bless the tatties, bless the neeps, the vegetarian version. And filled with fruits of field and vine, and feeling kind of frisky. The one that water turned to wine, we ask to bless the whisky.
Along you take your place, fain tribe but firm. Will I worthy of grace, as long as my arm. The groaning trencher there you fill, Your heart is like a distant hill. Your pen would help to mend the mill. Who once it feed. While through your pores the juice distill like amber tea. His knife, some knife, huh? They're flat of a hollow in Bellany. That's where I picked that up. All right, what did he say? Hold that. His knife, it's a rustic labour deck, and you were already slack. Can I sing you gushing ankles bright? Like only ditch, and then oh, what a glorious sight, warm, reeking, rich. You paths who make mankind a care, and dish him up the bill of fare. Old Scotland wants no stinking ware that jumps in the luggies, but if you wish a grateful prayer, yeah.
If you'd be uprising, upstanding rather, the toast is the haggis.
The haggis. Yes.
Pack the beast away. Enjoy your meal, and we will see you at the other end. Okay? So, if you wish, you may be upstanding, and the toast, loyal toast, is the king.
The king. The king. God
I need to see the king.
Rotarians will know that at a normal meeting these days we don't toast the king anymore. In fact, what we do now is we ring the bell, and the ringing of the bell says that that's 5 minutes to go before the meeting continues. So I was thinking that we would use the toast to the king as being that 5-minute warning, which will allow those weaker bladdered members in the room an opportunity to go and relieve themselves. So the clock is running, and possibly so.
Thank you very much. I hope to get away without this electronic restriction on me, but really I'm only firing on one cylinder at the moment, so we'll do the best we can. President Peter, honoured guests, fellow Rotarians, thank you for taking a chance and giving me this privilege of doing a toast to Robert Burns. It's a number of years, many years, since I'm actually at a Rotary Burns night. It was, it's never happened since, well, I'm pleased to say there are only 2 members here tonight who remember the embarrassment and why I haven't been to Rotary Burns nights. That was when President Eddie, President at the time, ordered me, Vice President, to sing Scots Wahey while he accompanied me on his chanter. Accompanied is not really the word to use in this case. It's more distance or diverged. We never started at the same time. We never met in the middle. And we certainly didn't finish in the end. As Ed went his merry musical way on his own and left me to go on my own musical melody on my own. So really, that caused a trauma to me that night. It really, I couldn't recover from it, and that's why, it's many years since I've been, I was forced, because of that trauma, to spend every January hiding in Lanzarote. Only coming back to these shores after this particular event was over. However, sadly, the travel insurance underwriters won't undertake responsibility for me when I depart these shores, and they've offloaded all risks tonight onto you. At least for tonight. However, I can promise at this stage, despite Eddie's proximity, I will not sing a note tonight in this toast. No, this is the serious part of tonight's programme. Immortal memory, the serious part of tonight's programme. I know this to be so because when it was you, yeah. It's when Alistair told President Peter that I had volunteered to do this tonight. Peter immediately said, "My God, this is serious." Thank you for recognising this serious part of tonight's programme. It's said that if a nuclear holocaust laid waste the world, and there were only 8 survivors. 2 were English, 2 were Welsh, 2 were Irish, and 2 were Scots. Now the 2 English would not speak to each other, because after all, they hadn't been introduced. The 2 Welsh would immediately form a choir.
Of course.
Jugsman a choir. The 2 Irish would immediately have a fight. The 2 Scots would form a Burns Club. I'm not sure of the first 3 of these prophecies, but I am utterly convinced that the 3rd one is true. And it's my privilege tonight to give you an insight into why it should be true. Our monarch's inmost year yen was 5 and 20 days begun. 'Twas then a blast of January wind blew Hansel in on Robin. Every mortal memory I've been to starts off that way. So, why be any different? The monarch's inmost year yen was 5 and 20 days begun. 'Twas then a blast of January wind, coming tomorrow, blew Hansel in on Robin. Well, the birth of Burns occurred on the 25th of January, 1759. Yet, here we are, 260 years later. This month, the Burns Nights, gatherings all over the world, hundreds, no thousands of Burns suppers like this will be held, and none like this. Certainly not. Thousands of Burns suppers will be held, a great deal of whisky will be consumed as Ruthie neighbours meet to celebrate the birthday. Despite the diversions of iPods, laptops, virtual reality, augmented reality, we still find time to honour the memory of a distant poet. And for no wonder, Among the great figures that have stepped onto the stage of Scottish history, none have been more remarkable than Robert Burns. Few more attractive, not many more so pathetically tragic, and none more potent in influence. Strange things, Burns is celebrated as a national hero mostly by people who don't read poetry. They're not all like President Peter here. He doesn't have the Bible at the bedside, he has a pile of poetry books, right? Right. Which he pleasures us with every Thursday night. No, I'm sure you'll agree that most Scotsmen are, they're by natural temperament, they're not addicted to poetry, metre, rhyming. Yet, when he appeared, Burns found instinct and unquestioned recognition. The Ayrshire Bard gave the world his songs and his poems, and all Scotsmen listened and applauded. It's told that even farm labourers of his own day saved their small earnings in order to possess a copy of his works. The first lot being the Kilmarnock edition of poems chiefly in the Scottish dialect by Robert Burns, published by John Wilson of Kilmarnock in 1786 at a cost of 3 shillings a copy. 612 copies printed, were sold out within a month. Just a month after publication. In fact, another edition of his poems came out, and they call it the Edinburgh edition. 3,000 copies were printed. 2,800 were sold before publication. It was a remarkable time. Where have I got to? Yeah. So, yes, the Scottish dialect, Rob Burns, John Wilson, 800, done. Now, that particular edition was an overwhelming success, and it lifted the poet from a turmoil of paternity suits and illicit love to the crest of a wave. And he made £20 profit on the first one. £20 profit, didn't he? Which in today's money is £4,000. But when he died, the nation mourned, and as years roll on, an even deeper appreciation has arisen. For Burns sang not for one age, but for all time. Think of that, remember that, not for one age, but for all time. One of his poems I particularly like, and contains a lot, is sadly used a bit like a music hall joke by anybody who wants to talk about the incomprehensibility of Scottish dialect. It is, of course, to a moose. Thank you. To a moose on turning her up in her nest by the plough. The first bit, the music hall joke. We sleepy, current, timorous beastie, oh, what a panics and neighbouriesty. The next day at the wall, say hasty, we bick and brattle. I would be loath to run and chase the murder and battle. And once the music hall stops laughing at not understanding a word, did you but realise to go on in that poem? Next verse. I'm truly sorry that man's dominion has broken nature's social union, which justifies that ill opinion which makes thee startle at me. thy poor earthborn companion. Standard English. No Allan Scots or Lowland Scots. I'm having sound problems. It's clicking backwards at this thing. Poor Babs is struggling. All right, you turn me off.
I've turned you off, we can hear you
You
well.
can hear it. Good, right, thanks. Well then, back to Tiamus. The difference between their thick accent at the beginning and then clear, concise, standard English, which inhabits quite a lot of his poetry. So don't let Allan Scots put you off. And the other is for all ages. For all ages. But Mussy, they're blessed compared with me. The present only touches thee, but backward, I cast my eye in prospects drear. And in the future, though I can't see, I guess and fear. Now that sentiment has been in the mind of man since the beginning of history, right up till now. From Cro-Magnon man, cave dweller, concerned that his trap for the woolly mammoth might fail, and the future of his family surviving the winter doubtful. 1348, Black Death. 1665, the Great Plague. Civil Wars. The Balkans. Ukraine. Sentiment goes through the head. The future of forwards, I can't see, I guess, and fear. I think it's marvellous how that line carries through the mind of man. However, to understand adequately what the genius of Burns did for the nation, you must take into account the time at which he lived. Way back in the 15th century, Scots had been a great literary language as well as a vigorous spoken language. But after the Reformation, which brought the Scots into closer contact with the English, brought the English translations of the Bible to Scottish homes and churches, James VI then moved south to take the throne of England in 1603, and then the Incorporating Act of 1707. All of this, Scots, as the literary language of Scotsmen, gave way more and more to standard English. Scots language gradually degenerated into a series of regional accents. Fit about that, Bob Duncan. Going to give a bit of your accent?
Niet zo bad.
Nee, ze bad, aye. And even Peter Holmes here, I know he thinks it's Irish, but Ulsterman and nearly Irishman forgot to go off the tree. Hamilton, Stranraer. Regional accents took over. Scottish political life was confused at this time. The church took over all intellectual activity. And though vigorous, it was narrow and fanatical. A sort of 18th century Taliban, really. There was a dullness, there was an absence of life among the people, and it certainly formed a fitting prelude to a great awakening, and I'm pleased to say our baffled and frustrated country chose to rediscover, revive, and develop our national traditions. And this role fell to, among others, Robert Burns. His poems and songs truly inspired revolution. For all that, and all yet, it's coming yet, for all that man to man, the world o'er shall brothers be, for all that. Many were still waiting for that happening in parts of the world. I like the story of the plane which developed serious engine trouble. The captain said, "We must lighten the load. I want 4 volunteers to jump out." Sadly, there are no parachutes, but I'm sure volunteers, 4 only, will be happy to do this noble deed to save the lives of the other 350 passengers. Immediately, an Englishman strode to the door, said, "God save the King," and stepped out. A Frenchman followed to the door, cried, "Vive la France!" and he stepped out. Then, of course, the German followed, saying, what's it they say? Come on, it's no way.
You the war is over.
Deutschland über das.
No! Auf Wiedersehen, meine Freunde. Then the American stepped to the door and said, "Remember the Alamo," and chucked the Mexican out. Dr. Burns, you can imagine the sheer delight in people and the sentiments that were greeted by simple country folk. It's not in titles, it's not in rank, it's not in wealth in a London bank to purchase peace and rest. It's not in making muckle mayor, it's not in books, it's not in leer to make us truly blessed. If happiness is not our seat and centre in the breast, you may be wise, you may be great, you can't be truly blessed. Nay treasures nor pleasures can make us happy lying, 'cause the heart's eye, the part eye, which makes us right or wrong. Now it's the first epistle to Davy Sellers, who was a brother poet, farmer, lover, and fiddler. Fiddler in the proper sense of the word. The tyranny of the kirk came in for some withering criticism too. O thou that in the heavens doth dwell, oh, if it pleases best thyself, sends yen to heaven and 10 to hell, and all for thy glory, and not for any good or ill I've done before thee. Of course, from Holy Willie's Prayer, one of Burns' greatest satires. As I say, the sentiment of Burns was revolutionary, but then he was born into one of the most exciting periods of history. The mid-18th century saw the start of the agricultural revolution in Britain. The Industrial Revolution was beginning. Across the Channel, the French Revolution heralded sweeping social changes which eventually were to topple aristocratic privilege. All over Europe, the established order was being questioned, and new ideas were flooding into men's minds. For instance, when Robert Burns was 5 years old, James Watt got the idea for improving the steam engine. In 1784, David Dale established the revolutionary cotton mills at New Lanark, where for the first time there was real care for workers. On the farming side, Andrew Meikle invented the first power-driven threshing machine. That was 1786. And during Burns' lifetime, thousands of miles of drains were laid to improve Scottish fields. The revolution of material progress, which was matched by new ideas, and these were expressed with relish and fervour by Robert Burns. While we sing God Save the King, we'll not forget the people. The crowning glory of Burns' achievement is by common consent, his songs. Every one of us carried snatches of his songs in our head, and we never learned them from a book. And yet we know many of the words by heart. And this started when Burns met James Johnson, who was a humble, self-educated lover of Scottish song, who'd invented a cheap process for printing music using stamped pewter plates. And it was he that proposed publishing a collection of songs. So when Johnson asked Burns for help, he responded with enormous enthusiasm. And he soon virtually took over the direction of the work. And this was the production of a book called The Scottish Musical Museum. Later he was approached by George Thompson for similar help in his collection of Scottish airs. And again, Burns responded enthusiastically. He refused to take any money for this work, considering, and I quote, it was his patriotic duty to collect, preserve, and recreate the songs of Scotland. The majority of his songs were love songs, and what gems they are. How about this for exquisiteness and delicacy? As the bosom dwells at dewy e'en, as in the bosom of the stream, the moonbeam dwells at dewy e'en, so trembling, pure was infant love within the breast of bonny Jean. Oh, for dashing brilliance, gae fetch to me a pint of wine, and fill it in a silver tassie that I may drink afore I go, a service to my bonny lassie. And then there are 4 lines which, according to an old critic, would have made Burns famous had he never penned another poem. Had we never loved so kindly, had we never loved so blindly, never met or never parted, we'd ne'er been broken hearted. That was from A Fond Kiss, the song which celebrated Burns' passion with Mrs. Agnes MacLehose, who is the Clarinda of the famous letters. I've got a book with me that has all the letters in it. Boy, he wrote some letters to her. Couldn't get away with that nowadays. Of course, Burns was not only the master of the love song. His Scots Wi' Hate, for example, probably regarded as the best war ode ever written, except when it's rendered by me, accompanied by Eddie on the chanter. There are songs of humour and conviviality, such as Duncan Gray and Willie Brood of Peckham Hot, He clearly had some Rotarians in mind when he wrote the opening lines to Death and Dr. Hornbrook. The clacking ale had made me canty. I wasn't a fool, I just had plenty. I staggered whiles, I ate it to free the ditches and hillocks and stains, and so on it went. It's a scene that can be seen often outside the Tappet Hen on Tuesday Rotary chats. Long may it continue. One of my favourites, which illustrates his sense of humour, is of course his ode to the road menders, which he wrote clearly with sterling counsel in mind when he said, "I've now arrived, thanks be to the gods, through pathways rich and muddy. It's a certain sign that making roads is no this people's study. Although I'm not with scriptures cracked, I'm sure the Bible says, heedless sinners shall be damned that do not mend their ways." Well, as man said, when the grandfather clock fell on the pram, time is on the wane. So, in conclusion, can I just say, there are some aspects of the life of Burns about which there has been fierce controversy and conviction. But he knew about his weaknesses and he admitted them. He was perfectly frank throughout his life's work about his love of strong drink and dear deluding woman, joy of joys. So I, for one, would not venture to cast judgment except to say that I'm thankful he was made of the same flesh and blood as ordinary erring humanity. Therein lies, I think, the secret of his power. His poetry, conditioned by his experience of life, is universal and ageless and gives endless pleasure, inspiration and hope to all those who care to read it. As we think of Burns tonight, we salute the Scots poet, songwriter, farmer, exciseman, the lover, the patriot, the son of Agnes Brune and William Burness, Caledonia's bard, who almost single-handed created a glorious Indian summer for Scottish literature, who gave Scotland back her self-respect and made himself known to people and generations far removed. In his own words, "For auld lang syne, my Joe, for auld lang syne, I'll take a cup of kindness yet, for auld lang syne." President Peter, honoured guests, fellow Rotarians, can I ask you to charge your glasses, to rise and join with me in the toast to the immortal memory of Robert Burns. Robert Burns.
much, Bob. We didn't need the microphone after all. That was fantastic. Thank you very much. Moving on now to the toast to the lassies. This is a weekend of some celebration in the Mackey household. We are celebrating 10 years of happy marriage. By coincidence, it's our 40th wedding anniversary. The toast to the lassies this evening is going to be given by Rotarian Stuart Brown. Now we know Stuart is very fit. He runs, he golfs, plays tennis, he cycles, man of some great stamina. It was no surprise, although slightly oversharing, when he said the other night over a few beers that he had made love to Alison for 5 hours the night before. 5 hours, I was impressed. 5 hours is a long time, and I said to him, 5 hours? Well, you're not bored? Oh, no, he said, we were role-playing. I says, role-playing? Aye, he says, we were playing doctors and nurses. So I made her wait in the other room for 4 hours, 55 minutes.
Very good.
Before they were married, Stuart asked Alison if he was the only one that she'd been with. Oh yes, she said. All the others were 9s and 10s. Stuart is a keen tennis player, as you know, but he got a great piece of advice from his father when he was a young man. Son, his father said, never ever date a tennis player. He said, love means nothing to them. Call upon Rotarian Stuart Brown to deliver the toast to the lassies.
Maybe just speak from here. It's nice to know that you at least think I can last 5 minutes, but there we go. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Quite hard to follow Bob, really, but we'll have a go. Tradition suggests that a toast to the lassies should touch lightly on the weaknesses of women. Because it's said behind every man there's a great woman, and it's true. And she's probably standing there going, just try and say something sensible, for God's sake. Ha, if only. Of course, there's an 80-year-old lady who marrying for the 4th time. When she actually became a bit of a celebrity. She was one of Alistair's clients, in fact. The media actually, they asked her, they said, would you mind talking about her first 3 husbands and what they did for a living? She said, well, my first husband was a banker. And then I married a man from the circus. The next was a minister. A minister? I said, now I'm marrying a funeral director. And so we asked, well, why have so many diverse husbands and careers? She said, well, I married 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready, and 4 to get So, quite hard to define the fairest sex. Well, I can see around the room tonight there's a lot of scientists here, so I've applied some scientific principles in way of definition. So I present to you the hazardous materials for a woman data sheet, which you'll probably all recognise if those of you who have maybe worked in the scientific community. We'll just run through it. Element, woman. Symbol, WO. Discoverer, Adam. Atomic mass, probably not important in this context. Occurrence, copious quantities in all urban areas, with trace elements elsewhere. Physical properties, well, surfaces can be covered in powder and paint. Boils at nothing and freezes for no apparent reason. Melts if given proper treatment. Bitter if used incorrectly. Yields to pressure applied to correct points. Non-magnetic but attracted to coins. And the natural shape can be deceiving and can change. Possesses a great affinity for gold, silver, platinum and precious stones. seriously, may explode spontaneously without prior warning and for no reason. This actually occurs more frequently if left alone with a male. Insoluble in liquids, but activity greatly increases by saturation in alcohol. The most powerful money reducing agent known to the human race, and leaves red deposits on glasses. Common uses: good aid to relaxation, and a very, very effective cleaning agent. Tests: pure specimens turn pink when found in a natural state, turn green when placed beside a better specimen, and soften and take on a rosy glow when soaked in hot water. And last of all, potential hazards: highly dangerous except in experienced hands, illegal to possess more than one, and very dangerous when using the word fine. Well, so chaps, how well are we in tune with our partners and how do they affect our lives? Well, a woman knows all about the children. She knows about best friends, romances, secret hopes, dreams, favourite foods, homework, school trips, dental appointments. And the man, he's probably aware there's some short people running about the house. There's a psychiatrist and a friend eating in a restaurant, and the psychiatrist points to one of the other diners. She says, "See him? He claims to understand women." "Oh, he's a colleague of yours." "No, he's my patient." My student flat bathroom had 6 items in it: toothbrush, toothpaste, squeezed from the middle of course, a razor, shaving foam, and a long-term bit of soap. And I think there was an old towel there. Ideal. Add Alison to the room and the bathroom accessories rose to over 400. No idea what they were. Well, perhaps not Burns, he probably knew. Because he wrote, "Well, with quacks of state, much each produces plan, and even the children lisp the rights of man." Oops, I've lost my data sheet here. Amidst this mighty fuss, let me mention, the rights of women merit some attention. So, to draw it together, Burns had a deep respect for the lassies. But gentlemen, if we're honest, we all share this. Bathrooms excluded, by the way. Of the many legacies Burns left to us, this toast stands out. It's probably relating to what Bob says, how his poetry stood through the ages. For this time of year, and probably only once in a year, some man will stand up and pay homage to the girls. We must concede that regardless of what role they play in their lives, we would indeed be lost without them. Yes, indeed, Burns had many sweethearts in his short lifetime, and although he wrote poetry on all kinds of subjects, it was his love of the lassies that inspired him to write verses. Even on his deathbed, his love of life and the lassies inspired him to write verses such as, "O wert thou in the cold blast, on yonder lea, my pleddy to the angry airt, I'll shelter thee, I'll shelter thee." Gentlemen, please be standing and charge your glasses for the toast to the lassies.
Thank you very much, Stuart. We all know that a good wife will always be at your side, telling you that if you'd only listened to her, you wouldn't be in the hole that you're in now. So to reply to Stuart, on behalf of the lassies, I'm very pleased to welcome Jill Adams, no stranger to the club and a past member herself. Jill is currently Deputy Head Pupil Support at the Queen Victoria School. We've strong links with the QVS, but I think in no little part these are down to Jill's hard work in that regard. I've seen her interact with the pupils and they clearly love her, as of course do we, Jill. In her capacity as part of the senior leadership team, Jill's called upon to do a fair number of things, and one of the things she was called upon to do recently was to attend the funeral of one of the governors of the school. At the end of the service, the minister invited anyone who wanted to say anything to come forward. And Jill went forward and went up to the microphone and said, "Bargain," and then went and sat down. At the end of the service, the widow came up and said, "Jill, thanks very much indeed. That meant a great deal." Glad I wasn't able to explain that. Every morning, as Jill walks from her car through the car park and to her office, she crosses a path where, coincidentally, she's struck every morning by a bike. It's a vicious cycle. Jill, I invite you to reply on behalf of the lassies.
Bob, I'm being careful of that rug. Bob warned me about the hazards that I was causing, so I've got up all right. So thank you first of all to our esteemed speaker Stuart for his wonderfully witty and eloquent toast to the lassies. It's not every day we get such fine praise, and I must admit it's making me feel a bit guilty following up in the traditional style where we ladies get the chance to have our say about the laddies. And if you know me well, you know that it's not often I have the last word. But we all know that she who laughs last, laughs longest. But before we dive into this charming sea of male shortcomings, let's first take a wee moment to appreciate the wisdom of the great Robert Burns, the bard himself, who seemed to have an uncanny knack for describing the peculiarities of both men and women. His words are timeless, as Bob said, and much like a good glass of whiskey, they often get better the more you reflect on them. Burns, in his epistle to a young friend, declared, "The honest man, though e'er sae poor, is king o' men for all that." And indeed we do love our men, rich, poor, or somewhere in between. But let's face it, a little honesty doesn't hurt sometimes. For example, ladies, how often do we hear, "No, I'm fine. I don't need any help with that," just before the lawnmower gets left out in the rain or the dishwasher is somehow mysteriously broken? Burns himself might have said, "The way to a man's heart is through his stomach, but if you can't find his way to the kitchen, you're maybe better off cooking for yourself." Of course, it is clear that Burns did have a soft spot for the fairer sex. In A Red, Red Rose, he beautifully describes love as being like the melody that's sweetly played in tune. And yet I can't help but wonder that he also recognised that a fair bit of that melody could occasionally be a wee bit off key. We all know the stereotypical image of the rugged, poetic Highlander, but let's not forget that our menfolk can also, well, sometimes be a bit of a mystery. Take the line from Tiamus where he says, "The best laid schemes o' mice and men gang off big lie." Or as we like to say nowadays, well, that was a bit of a disaster, wasn't it? Ladies. I think Burns would agree that the male ability to plan, then follow through on these plans, can sometimes be, shall we say, slightly aspirational. For example, I'm sure, ladies, every single one of us has witnessed a man setting out to fix something, and within minutes transforming the living room into a scene of utter chaos. A simple task, such as maybe hanging a picture, turns into a construction project. I'm just going to hammer this nail in, proudly wielding the tool as if he's about to complete, changing rooms like Lawrence Llewellyn Bowen. The next thing you know, the wall's full of holes, the nail's gone missing, and the picture's still leaning awkwardly against the couch. I can't be the only lassie in the room who sometimes thinks, and maybe it'd be better thinking as DIY as "day it yourself." I think the truth is, though, that men are often filled with the best intentions when it comes to the finer details. There's a line from Tam O'Shanter that speaks of this. "But pleasures are like poppies spread, you seize the flower, its bloom is shed." And gentlemen, when it comes to the promises of putting out the bins, we all know that the bloom of that intention can fade faster than I'll say I'll do it tomorrow. And that despite all this, we do love them, don't we? Burns knew how to capture that essence of human frailty, and I believe it is the same for us nowadays. In spite of our men's clumsy gestures, their half-hearted attempts at romance, and their occasional, well, incompetence at the basic household tasks, we all can agree that the men in our lives have something deeply endearing about them. Burns himself summed it up best in the Epistle to the Nanny, but there's a far better sicht than ony living thing. And let's face it, when the men do get it right, even if it's just once in a blue moon, they truly do shine in ways that can make our heart flutter, just like that red, red rose in the springtime. When it comes to love, as Burns so wisely penned in A Fond Kiss, farewell thou first and fairest, a sentiment I imagine many of us have thought when faced with the occasional antics of our beloved men. That first kiss was sweet, that first bit of romance was magical, but soon after, reality sets in. What Burns didn't mention, of course, that love often involves dodging piles of socks in the corner, or gently explaining for the 100th time that the milk doesn't go back in the fridge of its own accord. But we carry on, because despite these small deviations from domestic bliss, we know deep down that their hearts are in the right place. Just maybe not their laundry. And isn't it funny how men think that we have the problem with forgetting things? I mean, in Burns' day, you might forget a letter or a rendezvous, but today plenty husbands seem to have forgotten the concept of putting the lid back on the toothpaste. To be fair, Burns wasn't exactly the most reliable man himself. He was well known to be a wee bit of a ladies' man, and some of his antics might well have put Casanova to shame. His letters and poems to various women, including Clorinda, were legendary, and it's no stretch to say that his idea of romantic consistency might have been a wee bit unpredictable. But let's not be too harsh on these gentlemen. They do have an undeniable charm that always makes us forgive them, just like Tammy Wynette advised to stand by your man. How often have we seen them attempt to solve a problem that frankly wasn't even an issue in the first place, and in doing so create a brand new crisis that we have to swoop in and fix. And maybe that's mainly to do with the age-old tradition of male confidence. We all know that men, no matter how many times he's fumbled through a recipe or misread a map, will always declare with the utmost confidence, "I've got this." Ah yes, that classic line. You've heard it, I'm sure. It's like the line from Burns' Jolly Beggars. We're all knaves, but some of us are better at pretending to be saints. Well, the menfolk here may not be saints, but they do have a talent for believing that a few hasty decisions afterwards will somehow resolve everything, even when they've inadvertently started a kitchen fire by just warming up some leftovers. But then again, maybe that's where we should take inspiration from the bard himself. His own love life was a patchwork quilt of passion, confusion, with moments of unspoken sincerity, much like some of the men here we love. They might occasionally forget to put that cap on the toothpaste, or forget to take the bins out for the 3rd time in a row, but when it really counts, they step up. Finally, as we come to a close tonight, let's not forget that Burns himself had a bit of a rebellious streak. He was no stranger to breaking the rules, which I imagine is something our dear menfolk might share with him. Burns had his fair share of faults, but in the end, he embraced life with a hearty laugh and a true belief in the goodness of people. So let's not be too hard on the men in our lives. Burns, after all, was a man, and he certainly knew a thing or two about the imperfections of his own gender. He wrote in the Twa Dugs, "A dainty wee thing is a bonny lass, and a proud man's a thing of great disgrace." So let's raise our glasses, not yet, then to our laddies, to their strengths, their imperfections, their kindnesses, and their moments of well-meaning confusion. For without them, who would we have to laugh at, to shake our heads at, and to love, even in the face of 1,000 mismatched socks and forgotten anniversaries? I'd like to end with a wee poem in the manner of Burns to remind us of why we love them, despite all their foibles. So, if you forgive me, Ravi. To the gents. You stride with pride, you think you're wise, with every plan, you've got the prize. You'll fix the sink, you'll mend the door, in 10 minutes or maybe more. You swear you know just what to do, you've all the answers, tried and true. Yet just before the job's complete, you've tripped right o'er your ain 2 feet. You've such a way of being sure that what you say will always cure the world's ills, or that maybe think that DIY doesn't mix with drink. You tell us how to drive the car, then take the wrong turn, yes, by far, yet still you smile so full of grace and confidence o'er your face. When fixing things you're full of cheer, but often leave a trail of gear that flows across the hoose entire and make us wish you'd just retire. Despite each blunder, each mistake, your warmth and charm you never fake. With all your quirks we see the prize, a man who's true with loving eyes. So here's to you, please raise your glasses, I'm toasting you for us, your lasses. For in the end it's clear to see, without you lads, where would we be? So ladies and gentlemen, Rotarians and honoured guests, please join me in raising a glass to our laddies. To the laddies.
That was great, Jill. Thanks very much indeed. Jill's an English teacher in real life, and perhaps she can help me with this bit of comprehension. When my wife says to me on a Friday night, "What are you doing tomorrow?" and I say, "Nothing," that seems to be an invitation to invent a whole list of things for me to do. Is there something about the word nothing that means the exact opposite? When I say I'm doing nothing, what I mean is I'm doing nothing. However, maybe that's why we're celebrating 10 years of happy marriage. Our entertainment continues this evening with President Peter Williams, who's going to give us a recitation. I think with your love of poetry, Peter, I think you should hold yourself in readiness for this slot at every subsequent Burns Supper from now on. It's good to get somebody that understands and can appreciate poetry. So we're looking forward to that for the next X number of years.
There came 3 kings for these, 3 kings both great and high, and they have sworn a solemn oath, John Barleycorn should die. They took him up and cast him down, put sods upon his head, and they have sworn a solemn oath, John Barleycorn was dead. But cheerful spring came kindly on, and showers began to fall. John Barleycorn got up again, and sore surprised them all. The sultry suns of summer came, and he grew thick and strong. His head well armed with pointed spears, lest no man should him wrong. But sober autumn entered mild, and he grew wan and pale. His His bended joints and creaking head showed he began to fail. His colour faded more and more, he aged, casted into age, and then his enemies began to show their deadly rage. They ta'en a weapon long and sharp and cut him by the knee, then tied him fast upon a cart like a rogue for forgery. They laid him out upon his back and cudgeled him full score. They hung him up before the storm and cast him o'er and o'er. And they have filled a darksome pit with water to the brim. They heave it in John Barleycorn to let him sink or swim. They laid him out upon the floor and worked him further woe, until as signs of life appeared, they cast him to and fro. They have scorched with roaring flame the marrow of his bones, but a miller used him worst of all, for he crushed him between 2 stones. And they have drunk his ain life blood, and cast it round and round, until the more and more they drank, the more they did it, the more the joy abound. John Barleycorn was a hero bold, of noble enterprise, for if you do but taste his blood, 'twill make your spirit rise. 'Twill make the man forget his woe, will heighten all his joy, will cause the widow's heart to sing, though a tear were in her eye. So let us toast John Barleycorn, each man a glass in hand, and may his great posterity ne'er fail in old Scotland. John Barleycorn.
as I say, can be practising for the next few years to come. That brings us now to closing comments, vote of thanks and final toast, which until yesterday was 3 entire elements and is now combined all into the one. So you'll be pleased to know that all the jokes I had lined up for those 3 are now gone by the wayside. So you'll not be hearing any more of those. The closing comments, vote of thanks and final toast are to be given by President Peter. Peter's an accountant, as you know, and he likes things to be clear and precise and black and white. And with that in mind, he brought those forensic skills recently when he grilled a chicken for 2 hours. It still didn't tell him why it crossed the road. Peter, I invite you to provide the vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Well, I shall start with the Chairman, and thank you very much, Alistair, for the way you've run. After he did it last year, I really didn't think the jokes could be any worse. No, I'm teasing, except itself. So we're looking forward to next year as well. He's already done a vote of thanks to Campbell, but if I could offer mine thanks as well for you coming along, as I say, 2 weeks in a row to help us. I think he's obviously decided that he's going to try and get back in prison, the way he's wielding that knife. So it's be a bit careful. But thank you very much for doing that, the toast to the haggis. We then had the raffle run by Ivor, Rod and Graham. Thank you very much for that. All very well organised. Bob Watson gave us an immortal memory, a tour de force through the songs and poems of Robert Burns. He was also very kind to me by affirming that my message of getting some poetry out is the Thursday evenings he's getting through, so I do appreciate that. Take any compliments that you can get at this stage. I think you really captured the essence of Burns this evening, and you gave us a great rendering of why we're here and why we're celebrating Robert Burns, and thank you for that. We then had Stuart doing the toast to the lassies, who was clearly thoroughly embarrassed before he stood up, and despite the fact that he doesn't have his wife here to help him out, he managed to give us a really good toast to the lassies, and thank you for that, Stuart. And Jill used the opportunity to get back at us. Well, you know, you have to pay the most of these opportunities, but thank you for coming along and doing that, and we look very much forward to see you more at the club. Whenever you want. We could certainly deal with having a few more women members of the club, so we could do it. It only remains for me to say thank you to B for doing the poem. And a bit rusty. I've been working very hard on that one, but it's been a this one. Anyway, thank you. And thank you very much to Alistair for organising the evening. Well, we couldn't have done it all without you. Thank you all for coming, because without you guys, then obviously there's no Burns supper. So thank you all, and safe home with it. And the final toast is to Rotary and to Rotary International.